So the next presentation, we are joined by two rock star, superstar advocates that are really helping shape the conversation about the White House's precision medicine initiative. You know, this is a topic that I think a lot of us thought was a very far-fetched dream in the past. And through this initiative, it's really becoming more of a reality. And I'm excited, along with you, to hear about what they've already talked about and what things can be done and how to get involved in the future. This is going to be moderated by Danny Levine and Matt Might and Emily Kramer-Golinkoff. I had to get another pronunciation right. All right, there you go. We'll be joined today by, like I said, Danny Levine, and we'll just have a moderated conversation. So very interactive, low-key. Write down questions, and they'll have plenty of time at the end to answer your questions. So I will turn it over to Danny.
Great, thank you. So I made the mistake of wanting to not get frozen out by air conditioning today and wore a sweater rather than a shirt they can clip a mic to. So I'm going to do a mic drop at the end, though. So you know, this is a great panel to have today. I'm really pleased to be able to do this. But before we begin, I'm just wondering to do a quick survey. Could you raise your hand if you have a rare disease that you know is caused by genetic mutation, or your child has one? Okay, and how many of you are on a therapy that treats a symptom rather than the cause? And how many of you have a therapy that actually treats the cause of the disease? Wow. Okay, well, that's why we're here. I'm going to give a very abbreviated introduction to Matt Might, who's president of the NGLI1 Foundation and strategist in the Executive Office of the President of the White House with a primary focus on the Precision Medicine Initiative. Matt has lots of titles, and you should read his bio. You'll be very impressed with this large brain on the stage. How many business cards do you have, honestly?
5.
5, okay. I would have guessed more. And then joining us also is Emily Kramer-Golinkoff, who is a co-founder of Emily's Entourage. She was named a Precision Medicine Champion of Change by the White House, and I think you'll walk away here thinking that this is one remarkable woman. Thank you both for joining us. Matt, perhaps we can start with the idea of precision medicine. What is meant by the term precision medicine?
Sure, so I'll give you the simplest possible definition of precision medicine, and this is from the president himself. And before I give that to you, I actually have to clarify something. I'm always required to say that this is a talk in a personal capacity, even though it's about a work topic. And whatever I say may or may not reflect the views of the president and the administration. But the president said that precision medicine means delivering the right drug to the right patient at the right time. That's the essence of this entire initiative and what we're really striving for at the end of it. And in many ways, it's being driven by the emergence of genomic medicine and genomic technologies and sequencing, because this is giving us a sort of a molecular window on disease so that we can target the root cause of disorders rather than the symptoms.
So for the longest time, we talked about personalized medicine. I think around 2011 or so, precision medicine came in vogue as the term of preference. Are those the same things? Are we talking about different things? What's the difference between personalized medicine and precision medicine?
Yes, that's a good question, and you know I think they're very closely related. So I think personalized medicine fits within the umbrella of precision medicine, but precision medicine is also including things like precision health. So we can look at the health of an entire population and make targeted interventions within a population as well. So people talk about precision public health in addition to personalized medicine now.
So some of you may know that when President Obama was Senator Obama back in 2006, he actually sponsored legislation for a personalized medicine initiative of sorts. So it's taken a while to get here, but glad to see he's finally done it. What does the president's initiative actually do?
That's a great question. So there's several components of the Precision Medicine Initiative. The largest component of the initiative is building a national longitudinal cohort. So we want to recruit 1 million Americans to donate their health data, their genome, biospecimens, and allow us to track them and engage with them over the course of at least 10 years, if not longer than that. And what we really want is all that data to come back and then to be shared broadly with researchers in a responsible way, responsible and secure way, so that we can start to unlock the relationships between genes, diseases, and environments. And the reason this is important is, so just by show of hands, how many of you in this room have had you or a family member had their genome or exome sequenced? This is quite a bit. Now, how many of you, if you remember this, had variants of uncertain significance on that sequencing report? So that's the exact same set of hands. And so the issue here is that when you get your genome sequenced, you're going to find lots of mutations. And it turns out we don't know what most of them do. Most mutations are perfectly benign. And we don't have the data set we need to figure out what a mutation is doing when it comes to your health or the health of anybody, really. We know in some cases what mutations do, but the Precision Medicine Initiative, this large component of it, building this cohort, is really about building the data set we need to interpret genomes. The way I put it is sequencing the human genome was the easy part, even though it was very hard. Understanding the human genome is much harder still. But by collecting all of our health data together, we're going to actually have a window and the ability to interpret the genome for the first time. So it's the largest chunk of the program, and I think it's probably the most important one because it really is the key enabling step towards population scale and individualized precision medicine. There's other components to the initiative as well. There's a cancer component. So there's a program called NCI Match, where we're trying to take a patient's tumor genomic data and do a precise match with that on the medications best suited for them. There's some other parts of that as well. But really, it's all about using deep data from a patient to do very precise matching with drugs. There's also some components for FDA to help them understand and make steps towards policies toward how you return results to patients with genomic data, and even some components that are going towards ONC, basically the body that deals with healthcare IT. So there's lots of little pieces to this, but the biggest one is the one which is asking 1 million Americans to come together and donate their data so that we can unlock the mystery of the human genome.
So one of the things the initiative talks about is this being patient-powered research. What's meant by that term?
So really, it's not just your typical longitudinal study. We're not just saying 1 million people come together and then a small group of individual scientists will own this data. We really want to have everybody from classic academic scientists all the way down to citizen scientists engaged in analyzing this data. And those citizen scientists are perfectly welcome to be the people that are donating that data in the first place. We also want participants in the initiative sort of involved in the governance of the initiative so that they have a say in how this data is collected and how it's used. And I think that's groundbreaking in many ways in terms of a research study design.
So one of the smaller pieces of the funding is for interoperability and data security. I'm wondering, how important is that as we move forward in this initiative?
So there's definitely some money going to EHR, or electronic health record interoperability. There's also money going towards the security of this entire cohort, and so the security is critical. If we can't secure this data, no one will trust it and no one will join it. So one of my responsibilities within the White House is to help ensure that this data, which is donated, actually remains secure. Luckily, one of the hats I wear is I'm a professor in computer science. I do a lot of work with the military and cybersecurity, so I'm applying that knowledge there to make sure that when you all donate your data to the Precision Medicine Initiative, that none of the bad guys will get it. Now, EHR interoperability is something else we're very focused on, and it's actually it's challenging but critical component of this initiative, because if we have people with all sorts of different healthcare providers donating their data in different formats, it's going to be difficult to make sense of it when we start to analyze it in aggregate. So we're investing a lot of energy in ways that we can present a uniform interface to your electronic health record data. And interestingly enough, I mean, this is something that's been tried again and again, and we're sort of inching towards success. But what I like about the Precision Medicine Initiative is a sort of startup mentality about this. I think that we're taking a very different approach to EHR interoperability, and we might actually have some success with that. And it's I think, a critical component of the success of the initiative. So I don't have the answer to how we're going to do it just yet, but I think there's a lot of creative options on the table for how we're going to make EHR data interoperable enough to study it at scale.
So we have HIPAA, we have the GINA, the Genetic Non-Discrimination Act. How much of a barrier does privacy concerns pose to really unlocking the potential we have with all of the data that exists in medical records?
That's a great question. So you mentioned GINA. For those of you who don't know, GINA is the Genetic Information Non-Discrimination Act. And it provides some protections against you being discriminated against if you're on the basis of your genetic information. And its protections are not absolute. There are things it doesn't cover, like life insurance. Before I was resequenced or had my genome resequenced by Illumina a few months ago, I went ahead and maxed out my life insurance before I got the results back. And encourage you all to do the same. But for example, your employer cannot discriminate against you on the basis of your genetic information. But because its protections are not absolute, we do have to be very careful about what we tell participants about themselves in this program. And there's an effort in this program to really tell everybody everything we know about them. But that does present some challenges in terms of what repercussions they might face in terms of health insurance or life insurance.
So we had Anthony Philippakis on the stage yesterday throw out this wonderful idea of having a checkbox on medical records where you could donate them to research. But is it time that we rethink biomedical privacy?
Yesterday was the time. But yes, we're well past the time to rethink how we think about privacy. And I think privacy is a knob that we have to let patients tune on their own, and I'm sure Emily has her own feelings about this. But I feel like everybody's got their own comfort level when it comes to privacy in biomedical research. And I think the rare disease community in particular is an outlier in this regard. I think many of us are much more comfortable than average in exposing our medical records for the sake of research because, these are our lives on the line, the lives of our loved ones, and we're not afraid to share our data. And honestly, that's a real strength. I've made this argument again and again since the founding of the Precision Medicine Initiative that when it comes to the people we want enrolled in this project, we want rare disease because we're really aggressive in terms of privacy and data sharing. And because we're special, we actually have the most valuable medical data there is. You'll get more information out of one rare genome than you may out of 100 healthy genomes. That's just a scientific fact. So, I think it's really, it benefits all of us to have these flexible privacy policies when it comes to an initiative like PMI, and to really broadly engage the rare disease community.
Well, let's bring Emily into this. Does that make you feel special?
Yeah.
So many of you may recognize Emily from this morning. She was in the video about clinical trials. But if we might just revisit some of that, you have cystic fibrosis. For people who may not be familiar with the disease, what is cystic fibrosis?
Yeah, so I have a disease called cystic fibrosis. It is a rare disease, and it is a progressive genetic disease. I inherited a copy from my mom and my dad, and it primarily affects the lungs and digestive system, but truly CF, like probably so many of your diseases, affects really the whole body. And so there have been some really game-changing breakthroughs for the treatment of CF, as many of you probably closely track. But I have 2 copies of a rare mutation of CF, and so none of the big breakthroughs have been for me. And so, I think my foundation and personally a lot of my work has been in trying to sort of raise my hand, as an orphan of an orphan disease, and try to get research attention and try to get coordination around it, because I have advanced stage disease and time is of the essence, and so we need people thinking, working together, and my goal is that the only thing that stands between us and breakthroughs is science, and so we can hopefully clear all of the sort of organizational barriers that often slow the process.
So you say have advanced stage disease. What does that mean?
Yeah, so I have about 35% lung function, and I am right on the verge of being a candidate for or going through evaluation for a lung transplant, which is the only option when you get to end stage disease. But unfortunately, of all the solid organs, lung transplant is still the least successful. And so if you're lucky enough to get listed, and if you're lucky enough to get an organ while you're on the list, and if you're lucky enough for the surgery to go well, still only 50% of people make it to 5 years. So my goal is to hold on to my original set of lungs for as long as I can.
You mentioned breakthroughs recently. Vertex's drug, Kalydeco, which targets the specific mutation, was seen as a major breakthrough. It is precision medicine in reality. What did that mean for the CF community, even if you didn't have that particular mutation?
Yeah, so it was, I think, January 31st, 2012, when the FDA approved Kalydeco, and it was, there's two big dates in CF history. 1989, when the gene was found, and then, January 31st, 2012, when Kalydeco came out, because as the first drug to treat the root cause of CF, it was proof of concept. And, I think probably so many of you can relate to this idea. The scientific community keeps telling you, the cure is right around the corner. This big breakthrough's, right around the corner, and you keep waiting. And, in 1989, when the gene was found for CF, we were told 5 years until there was gene therapy that was going to be available to patients. It's been far more than 5 years, and we are still waiting anxiously. And so I think the approval of Kalydeco is like this tangible hope. Even it wasn't for me, and it only addressed the mutation that affects about 4 to 5% of the CF population. But it meant that if they could crack the code there, that could be applied much more broadly, potentially. And I think the other exciting thing about it is that it finally meant people were interested in our rare disease. And so hopefully, provided kind of a template, or inspiration for others to get more involved. I will say that at the same time, I was excited as a member, of the patient community and the CF community. I was excited for so many of my friends who were getting this breakthrough treatment, but I can't deny feeling, it was bittersweet. Since then, there have been more drugs from Vertex that address actually the most common mutation of CF, which again, I have a rare copy, so that didn't help me either. But I'm in this weird place that's kind of like on the cusp of science, but I'm just on the other side. And it's a tantalizing place to be. So I think for me, it was impetus that it proved that the dream is possible. And it pushed me to keep, it reinvigorated the fight in a lot of ways, because we're not there yet. And, I don't have time to wait.
So why don't you talk a little about how Emily's entourage came about?
Yeah, so in December of 2011, so just the month before the approval of Kalydeco, we were, obviously closely following the drug development pipeline and kind of knew that it was right around the corner. And so we saw all these exciting things happening and started to get a little bit more interested in research and really started to dig. And the more we looked into it, we couldn't find much hope. And that's a disheartening place to be. We wanted to be hopeful, and we couldn't find very much sort of tangible work that we could cling on to. And at the same time, my disease was progressing, and we were desperate. There wasn't a lot of focus. There didn't seem to be any group or anybody that was all that interested in my particular mutation. And so it was kind of like a do or die moment for us, where we realized if someone's going to do it, it has to be us. And so we had no idea what we were doing, but we, in this day of this virtual era, we made a video, a very homemade video. My brother must have spent like hundreds of hours in the Apple store getting help, because he had no idea how to edit a video. And we sent it out via email to everyone we knew. We posted it on social media. And these are kind of like the channels we were familiar with. So we were scrappy, and we used the resources we had. And our goal was to raise $50,000 in the first year. And within 1 week, I thought that personally was a really audacious goal. But my dad pushed us to set it at 50. And within the first week, we raised over $40,000. And yeah, and it was overwhelming because I think, I'm an introvert, and surprisingly, and my disease was never a secret. I mean, my inner circle and beyond, always knew about it. I did infusions in class and this and that, but I had never really broadcast my story. It's not really my natural inclination. And it was like we realized how much people want to help. And sometimes, and to me, putting my story out there has been kind of just a means to an end, a way to tap into the incredible compassion that exists all around us, but sometimes you don't even really realize the full extent of it. But since then, we have learned quickly on the job, as so many of you probably have as well, and we quickly found that kind of the traditional RFA, request for proposals and applications process takes a long time, and for people like me who don't have the luxury of time, we have formed a scientific advisory board, and we're really trying to sort of change the way that breakthroughs come about by laying out a research roadmap and having our organization articulate and really drive the research agenda rather than letting researchers or industry do it.
Let me stop you there. So,
Yeah.
so actually, you raised about $1.5 million so
sorry.
far. But that doesn't really impress me. What impresses me is how she was able to put together the scientific advisory board, which, well, how did you do that? And it was a scientific advisory board that you decided to put together that was multidisciplinary in nature. And maybe you can talk a little about why you did that.
Yeah. So I'm not going to lie, it's hard work. It's really hard. And it requires, a lot of networking, but it also requires, some good luck. It's just so happened that one of my close friends from high school, her father was a longtime CF researcher. And, as a high schooler, I heard about it for a long time, but I didn't really understand the full extent of his background. And so one day, my parents and I just sort of, we knocked on their door and said, can we just pick your brain? We have a couple questions. And that was about 2.5 years ago. And we like to say we've never left their living room. And he has since, Kevin Foskett, has become the chairman of our scientific advisory board and has helped us sort of put together this preeminent group of scientists who are not only experts in cystic fibrosis or even in nonsense-mediated decay, nonsense mutations, but translational research. And I think that is really key.
So Matt, you get a call from a 30-year-old woman who has no background in science formally, but she's setting a research agenda in your field. I mean, how do you react to that? How common, how big a thing did she pull off in that regard?
I'd say it's extremely unusual to have patients that take it anywhere near as far as Emily have. I have a lot of respect for what you've been able to do in such a short amount of time. I mean, it really is a remarkable achievement.
So just to take a kind of a side note here, because this is one place where I think you really see the power that rare disease patients can have in motivating researchers. I'm wondering if you just quickly tell the story of your visit at Vertex right before a holiday. Emily has given, I guess, millions of epithelial cells from your nose.
I've given cells from, iPS cells, nasal epithelial
So
cells, yeah.
what is the value of
Yeah.
that to a researcher, and what was your experience when you met the researcher at Vertex who was getting ready for a holiday?
Yeah, so, well, in terms of the cells, I think one thing we found early on is that a big barrier was that there weren't cell models for many of these folks to be working on, even if they were interested. And so, that's something I can actually help with. And so, I have donated millions of cells and tried vigorously to kind of distribute them, around the world. Because we want to get people interested, and we don't want there to be barriers. In terms of the trip, I was at Vertex earlier this week, but I was also there in December, and I quoted this amazing exchange in my most recent visit because it was so moving. I was speaking with one of their scientists, and I was going on a tour of the facility, and it was right before the holiday breaks in December, and he was saying, I have to be honest, I came in this morning and I was kind of tired, and really ready for the break to begin. It's been a long year, we've been working so hard, but I have to tell you, after meeting with you and your mom, I'm staying late tonight, and I'm getting back to work. And I think that really speaks to the value that these individual one-on-one relationships have with researchers. So if I could give you one piece of advice for interacting with researchers, it's just show up. Find a way to meet them in person. So when they're working on your vial of cells or whatever it is, it's not like a digital code that they see, but a person with potential and dreams and a family and a community and important work to do in the world. I think that, in our experience, has been really powerful.
So Matt, you touched on this a bit before, but you have actually called the president's initiative as the intellectual sequel to the Human Genome Project.
That's right.
It's often said we're very good at generating data, but getting actionable information out of it is another story. What do you think this is going to do in terms of carrying us to that actionable information?
Yeah, I was alluding to that earlier, that sequencing the human genome was the easy part. Understanding the human genome is the hard part. And again, right now, as many of us in this room know, when you get that sequencing report, it doesn't tell you what to do because we don't know what a lot of these genes or what these mutations are doing to a lot of these genes. And by collecting all this data together, we'll be able to interpret what these genes are doing in many cases for the first time. There's a large portion of the genome that we actually don't understand at all. And hopefully we'll actually be able to, the way I put it is we're sort of building a genetic telescope with the Precision Medicine Initiative. You can sort of, when you're looking at a sequencing report and you look at a gene or a mutation, you can say, well, what is this doing in the wild? What is this doing in the population? So we actually have a sense of what it does for human health. And that's the first step towards actionability. I break clinical precision medicine into sort of two parts. There's the diagnostic part, which is what's wrong, and the therapeutic part, which is how do we fix it? And so the Precision Medicine Initiative as structured really takes us a long way toward answering the what's wrong question, which is really the key step towards actionability. And some people would say that, well, knowing what's wrong isn't necessarily action, but I totally disagree. I think knowing what's wrong is a key component of taking action, because it's knowing what's wrong that lets you find your community. And I think it's communities, especially in rare, that drive action. I think it's communities that will drive the drug development process as never before. I think that's the thing that's going to be sort of a defining feature of the precision medicine era, is the way in which patient communities and patients themselves disintermediate the drug development process and execute the individual components on their own. And we've seen lots of good examples of that at the summit already. I feel like Ethan Perlstein's company, Prolara, they're disintermediating, model organism development. They're disintermediating the part where you can identify gene targets, and they're putting it in the hands of communities, so that individual rare disease communities can actually take that step themselves instead of relying entirely on pharmaceutical companies for every step of the process.
So if people in the room wanted to participate, is there an opportunity for them to get involved in the research study?
Absolutely. So if you want to get involved in the Precision Medicine Initiative, we'll be taking everybody. And I actually, Even before I joined the White House, when it was in the planning stages with NIH, I argued at the planning meetings that we really need to make sure that children are eligible to join, and they are. And I made that argument very explicitly because I said, if you ignore children, you ignore much of rare disease. We fought hard on your behalf for you to be able to join, and I hope you will. So stay tuned in the coming months. Depending on where you live, we're going to start enrolling participants in the Precision Medicine Initiative cohort so that you can begin donating your data so that ultimately we can unlock the secrets of the human genome.
So one other thing you had touched on briefly earlier was that the president wants to return all data to patients. How unusual is that, and what's the potential of that having in reshaping the way we do biomedical research?
Yeah, so there was a summit back in February where the president basically said it's absurd that we don't currently return all data to patients. And I thought that was striking for him to say that. I think a lot of people in the room thought it was striking for him to say that. And I think, with this initiative, it really will set a new tone for how we do biomedical research. Right now, there's an attempt to really guard patient data if you're a researcher. And I say this, I'm a researcher myself. I'm also a professor at the Harvard Medical School, so I understand why researchers do this. There's this incentive to keep it locked up. And with this initiative, it's going to go back to patients. And that's very unusual, and I think it really will set the tone for research going forward, and it has to. Things have to change from the status quo. We can't keep hoarding patient data away from them, particularly in rare disease, where most of your or maybe all of your care sometimes occurs in the context of the research system. You have a right to your clinical data. You don't have a right to your research data, and that's a huge disservice to everybody in this room. So I think that was a bold call to change how we do research. And to give patients back all of their data. There's some challenges to it as well. We have issues like GINA and what this might do for health insurance and things like that. But ultimately, I think it's a good thing. When you give patients back their own data, you empower them. And it means their data is now portable. They can take it to different research, so they get second opinions. They can aggregate their data. And I think that this is going to really reshape how we do research, because it's going to put patients to the forefront of research, because they'll be in charge of their data. They'll be in charge of the questions they get to ask of their data as well.
So one thing I think people with rare diseases, particularly with fatal rare diseases, feel is urgency. Your son, I believe, was the first person ever diagnosed with NGLI1 mutation. Emily, you've heard Emily's story here, but let me ask both of you, how do you see this initiative accelerating drug development?
That's a good question. So I think there's several ways that this could happen. So one interesting thing you can do when you get 1 million people is you can find what I call sometimes the walking dead. The people that should be dead but aren't. You should look at people that have these extraordinary risk factors for certain diseases, but for some reason have survived. And then you can look at their genomes and say, well, why did you survive when everybody else in your situation didn't? And if you find genes that have influenced their survival, those genes become targets for drug companies to develop for. And so that's one way that you can start to identify or create new medicines out of something like the Precision Medicine Initiative. You can do that on a smaller scale. If rare disease communities are within something like the Precision Medicine Initiative, you could look for modifiers even within a single disease community. But modifiers that, again, become targets for drug companies to shoot at.
Emily, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think, even just having this, the whole initiative has put this discussion on a national radar that has, I think, first of all, the rare disease community has gotten a ton of attention that we otherwise wouldn't have gotten. I know in the State of the Union this year, they actually talked about it, and there was a man with cystic fibrosis who was there, kind of representing the promise of precision medicine. So I feel encouraged that it's becoming a higher priority item in sort of the national discourse. I think just the president's incredible support for this is setting the tone, as Matt said, for researchers, nationwide and beyond. So I think it's pretty important. I also think having, the million cohort is going to be like a treasure trove of data that is going to really get more people looking at, trying to find, interesting features and actionable items that hopefully then we can find a way to bump over to the folks who can make drugs and therapies to address it.
So we do have a few minutes for questions. Are there questions out there in the back? Right in the back of the room?
Oh, I think she was. Yep.
Oh, sorry. Well, why don't you go ahead?
I'd like to get involved with this not only as someone who would like to put data forward, but also in advocacy, because I've been talking about doing something like this for a while, not necessarily with just this, the group of people that are healthy and not necessarily generally sequenced, but also kind of my specific cohort of patients, which is people who are diagnosed clinically with something that they say, oh, we don't know the mutations for it, and yet it's diagnosed quite frequently. So I feel that a large portion of the people being diagnosed with this, don't really have it, and that it's a much bigger thing. So how would someone get involved with this specific initiative on an advocacy scale as well?
Well, I'd say that the first step is to sign up. And if you have a disease where there's not a well understood genetic basis for it, this initiative could provide a way for you to gather people suffering from the condition and start aggregating your data together, since you have a chance to find the underlying genetic basis for the disorder. Certainly, long term, we're looking at doing full sequencing for every member of this initiative, and when we get to that point, we could do a lot of interesting disease discovery or gene disease discovery.
In the back?
Sandra Tremulous with the Lipoprotein(a) Foundation. I was wondering, as an incentive for participating in this precision medicine initiative, if there would be an opportunity for the 1 million patients that participate in it as an incentive, that there would be a statute that would guarantee them health and life insurance for the rest of their life.
You want to repeat that you don't speak for the president? Or?
Yeah, I definitely don't speak for the president on this one. Well, so right now there's just not enough money in it to do that. So the simple answer is we definitely can't do that right now. And I also think that beyond this initiative, when it comes to publicizing genomic data and the repercussions you may face for doing that, we need Congress to act. We really need an act of Congress that will protect people, from people that might abuse the genetic data that they release. And no one initiative is going to be able to solve this problem by itself. But this initiative faces the problem just the same. And I don't know at what point we're going to realize that Congress has to act. Probably when there's a crisis. That's the way it usually happens, I guess. But I think we're at the point now where we need some kind of legislation to protect patients from what can happen when they disclose that data.
Up front?
Are there strategies in place in PMI that have to do with this rapid influx of patients that our foundations and organizations will have to support, either from an education, support, distribution standpoint? And then also, if you find mutations of a rare disorder that don't have a foundation, are there plans to help build supportive mechanisms there?
Yeah, no, I'll say what I can, which is that I think there's going to be a tremendous capacity for peer-to-peer learning in something like PMI and peer-to-peer engagement. And I hope that we take advantage of the capacity in this initiative to do those kinds of connections, so that as new diseases emerge, if they emerge within the context of the cohort, that we would connect these people and say, look, you two should talk. Because it looks like you two need to get together because you have a similar health story, or you're both members of this new disease, and maybe you should consider starting a foundation. The initiative itself doesn't have sort of any kind of planning in place that I can think of to help those foundations get started. But in terms of enabling engagement I think your patient-to-patient or participant-to-participant engagement will be a major part of something like PMI going forward.
In the back? So there is...
I just wanted to make a comment. I'm on a very rare immunotherapy drug I just started called Keytruda, and I've had cancer for 15 years, and I got it because I just called up the drug company myself. So I just want to give a shout out of encouragement that, and I also want to know if there's education for doctors down the road who are very resistant. My oncologist, who I love and I've had for 15 years, didn't want me to do this. And I said, if you don't let me do this, I'm going to go somewhere else to someone else who will let me do this. So sometimes you just have to just call up the drug company and present your case. And I'm one of about somewhere between 1 and 10 people that are on this drug now for leiomyosarcoma. And some of us are having success. I'm going to find out in about a week. But sometimes you just have to pick the phone up, and it works. So I love you, and I love your foundation, and I just wanted to say that to give other people, pick up the phone.
Thank you all for the optimism that I think you share by talking about the power of precision medicine. My question is about the timeline for impact, because I represent the Huntington's disease community, and recently we've had success with genome-wide association studies and some great collection of data. But as you mentioned, the opportunity it provides to identify targets, we're still talking on timelines that are decades long. And I'm scared about how long it's taking us to get to where we need to go, and I wondered if you could both comment on that.
Sure. Well, I'm scared too. I'm the father of an 8-year-old boy with a very life-threatening condition. He was the first one ever discovered with NGLY1 deficiency, and we only know of 57 others, even now, 4 years later. And for all of them, it's a dangerous and life-threatening condition. And it never feels like drug development is moving fast enough. I think all of us probably feel that way. And maybe it never will. Maybe it really can't. But there are certainly ways we can accelerate it. Again, I'm excited by the way I see the entire process being disintermediated. I'm excited by the way that technologies like CRISPR can accelerate model organism development and drop the costs. I'm also, as it turns out, I'm a co-founder in a precision medicine company called Paranomics, where what we're doing is individualized screening of existing compounds against patient cell lines. So we can do individualized drug screens for single patients now against all approved compounds, and we're starting to have success in repurposing that existing FDA arsenal for rare conditions. And my hope in the short run is that we can vastly expand the use of repurposing. Because in the short run, repurposing is to some extent all that we have. And I do think we really underutilize the full FDA library that's out there right now. And I think there's a big role for academia and a big role for government and a big role for private industry to play in repurposing going forward. And in the long term, I'm optimistic that technologies like gene therapy and enzyme replacement will eventually mature to the point where most diseases will benefit from them, at least within the rare community. But I share your concern entirely that we're not moving fast enough. But I'm hopeful that with what's happening right now, the process will speed up.
Okay, we have time for one last question over here.
I'm going to say this on the premise that they always tell you there's no stupid question. But we're hearing a lot of the president's support. The president will no longer be the president very soon. What keeps motivating this forward?
Well, I mean, maybe ask me again in November. I really don't know right now. Well, I think what's going to keep us motivated is really the patients and the participants. I mean, if people get engaged, if people get excited, this program is authorized by Congress, and it has to get reauthorized by Congress. So if we enroll and we engage and we take charge and we make it a success, then hopefully no president can stop it.
I think he just threw it back at you and said it's on you.
Oh, yeah, and I should also mention there are other programs that are already ongoing that are quite successful. So there's the Million Veterans Program, which is doing something very similar. It's actually one of my projects at the White House. And it's already enrolled 500,000 veterans, and we're just now beginning to start to analyze this data. And it's going to demonstrate, I think, the real potential of the Precision Medicine Initiative. Because what we do with the Million Veterans Program will be, really a foreshadowing of what we ultimately can do when we get 1 million healthy Americans and sick Americans to donate their health records to start unlocking these relationships.
Well, please join me in thanking Emily Kramer-Golinkoff and Matt Might. Thank you both.
Okay, am I back on? Yeah, okay. So that was a lot of information. I am very floored by the potential of that, and I hope that this inspired you all to go sign up and be one of the 1 million that are part of this. Now that you're super excited and are ready for your breakouts and ready for next year, I'm going to invite my colleague, Alex Schlott, up to the stage, who is going to share a little bit about what 2017 holds in store for the summit. I also want you guys to give her an extra special round of applause because she is the one running behind the scenes as the director of events for Global Genes. So huge round of applause for Alex. And
good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're having a great second day. I hope the first day was awesome, and I hope you've been learning a lot. I hope you've been loving the accommodations, the hotel. I'm really excited. We spent months planning this one, but we're already set for 2017, and we have an amazing new location in store for you guys. So if you can turn towards the TVs, I have a little short clip that I want to show you guys to get you excited about 2017 and what we are going to do next year. So next year, we're going to Hotel Irvine. It's about 15 minutes from here. It's close to the airport. It's going to be awesome. They are so excited to have us, and I think you guys are in store for a great year. So start watching us on social as we get ready for 2017, and register early. It'll make me really happy. So thanks, guys.
And she will be sharing some other surprises that weren't in the video, including an off-site location for the Tribute to Champions of Hope. So make sure to keep your eyes peeled for Save the Date that's coming soon. So I'm a little sad. This is our last bit together, so you'll be heading out to your breakouts. It has been an absolute pleasure to be your MC, as I said earlier. I feel as if we've accomplished the welcoming environment we hoped to have for each of you as you entered the summit today and yesterday. I do feel very much as you're my extended family after these last couple days. So thank you for all of the well wishes from both me and all the other team members that have been pulled aside or nudged and hugged, and I'm sure Carrie's probably hugging someone right now somewhere. So thank you again. We invite you back tonight for our Tribute to Champions of Hope. Community Nominated Award winners will be on the stage, but it'll be more glam for our event. So we will not have a second breakout in this room, but you can go on your agenda to see where all the different ones are. How-tos, where are they? I can't see if you're pointing, but I hope you are pointing. 1, 3, and 4 are that way. And then track 2 is right here. 4 o'clock is when the pre-awards reception, sponsored by Vertex, will happen in the May Ballroom foyer. Then the awards will happen right after at 4:30, and then we'll end the day with Reggae Funk Fest that is sponsored by PRA Health Sciences and Mango Habanero. For the evening awards, I did skip over my notes here, but it's sponsored by Genentech, Horizon, Mallinckrodt, and Takeda. So enjoy your last couple educational sessions and get ready to party and honor all of the great advocates that are in the room today. So thank you.